It's on. Hello. Hello, hello. Welcome to the July 25th meeting of the Lake Forest Historic Preservation Commission. The Commission is here before you tonight to work together with all of you, property owners, neighbors, and architects, to continue the tradition that was established nearly 40 years ago in this community. That tradition is a review process that allows community members to work together to preserve the qualities and unique character that make Lake Forest a special community. City of Lake Forest is committed to conducting open and democratic meetings. To achieve that goal, meeting procedures have been adopted by the Commission, and a copy of the procedures is available at the back of the room on each agenda. As always, it's the intent of the Commission to help manage the development and the growth of the City of Lake Forest with a keen sense of preserving the historic structures and open space in the city for all its present and future residents. And our goal is to move each petition before us tonight through the review process as quickly as possible, while balancing the interests of the petitioners, neighboring property owners, and the larger community. And we'll start this evening with the introduction of the commissioners.
Susan Athenson.
John Travers.
Bill Ransom.
Kurt Pairitz.
Fred Moyer.
Mary Ellen Swenson.
All right, thank you. And first order of business is we have a set of meeting minutes from our March 22nd, 2012 meeting. Rather extensive piece of work. So I'll ask if anyone has any comments for that set of meeting minutes.
I would just comment that on page 22 in the fifth paragraph down, the fifth full paragraph, there's a typo in the last line. It says, since mountainy areas of Lake Forest do not have sidewalks. So no big deal. It doesn't really change the meaning, but it shows I read it all the way through.
Nice job. Any other any other comments? All right, I will look for a motion, if there is one, to approve these.
I approve the minutes with the proposed change.
And the motion's been made by Commissioner Ransom. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Moyer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you for that. All right, our first agenda item is a consideration of a request for a certificate of appropriateness approving an addition to an existing residence and driveway modifications at 1411 North Lake Road. And while the petitioner is setting up, I'll just ask if anyone has a conflict on this one, ex parte conflict. And I see none. So come on up and tell us what you got.
Good evening. My name is Michael Lynch Construction. I'm presenting 1411 Lake Road on behalf of the Shabackers. It's basically a small garage addition and driveway modification. The main proposal is, I'm just going to present in two parts, the first being the garage addition and the second being the reconfiguration. The addition is basically a 4-foot addition to both the west and the south, a little bit less on the south side. As you can see here, the site plan here just represents the footprint of the addition in relation to the existing house. Here, this shows the existing floor plan, and the point of doing the addition is to basically get a 3-car garage. So what we're doing is utilize some existing storage space, doing a 4-foot addition along the side to accommodate a 3-car garage by increasing the footprint pretty nominally. And then to recoup some storage space, we're doing a small addition off the back. The elevation here shows the addition right here, and then the reconfigured garage doors. Here are 3 pictures of the front of the house taken at varying angles. You can see that the addition will be over here, kind of tucked out into the wooded area. This is kind of a shot head on. So it's kind of hard to see. These are the side elevations, or the side and the rear elevation here. This being the west side here, you can see that the addition is going to be kind of nestled into this wooded area. It doesn't affect any trees. And then along the back side here, the addition comes here for the small storage area. Moving on to the driveway reconfiguration, This shows the existing driveway. It comes in along Lake, a little private drive off Lake Road. It comes in here and goes right into the garage area. Right now it's not terribly accessible, hence why we're proposing to reconfigure it. This picture here just kind of shows what happens when you have more than 3 cars in there. It gets pretty unmanageable. The driveway reconfiguration here is a circular driveway. Garage, just pretty much same garage entrance. If you look closely along here, you can see the existing driveway underneath the proposed. So you can see we're moving some area here and basically putting a new driveway here. This area stays pretty much the same. And then again, I just try to highlight the existing underneath to show the change. And then as far as along with the driveway reconfiguration, we did a full landscape plan. So just to show the impact of the new driveway, we're going to remove a couple trees in here and replace them with a little nicer trees, and the proposed paver area here as well as here. So it really kind of cleans up the existing driveway and makes a much nicer approach that's more manageable. And that's it. I'll take any questions.
All right, I'll tell you what, let's do our staff report first, and then I'm sure we'll have some questions for you.
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. My comments will be brief. This is a fairly straightforward request. The house is located within the historic district. However, it is not a contributing structure to the district. I believe the home was built in the 1980s. This proposal is to expand the garage to accommodate an additional car, as well as some storage space to the rear. The manner in which it is expanded does protect the significant trees to the west of the property. So I think that is a positive aspect of this request. With respect to the driveway reconfiguration, the city arborist will review the landscape plan just to make sure that the proposed replacement plantings are consistent with the ordinance and do adequately replace the trees that are being removed. We are recommending approval of the project as submitted and welcome your comments and questions.
All right. Now's an opportunity for commissioners to ask any questions of the petitioner or the staff, if you have any.
I have a question. I'm looking at the north elevation, and the one thing that stands out to me is the roof line just is incredibly long and uninterrupted. And I wonder if you had thought of putting a break in the roof line at all.
Actually, what we were intending to do there was essentially just extend that ridge line a little bit, so as to not change the existing roof configuration. We certainly could look at that. What we were trying to do is just keep that ridge and not change the roof pitch, really.
So what's the dimension of that increase in
It's
that?
4 feet.
4 feet.
4 feet?
The ridge increase is much less because it's a hip roof. So
4 feet at the eave, though, right?
the addition itself is 4 feet. I'm not quite sure, how much the ridge increases in proportion.
Other questions or comments for? Sure.
Question on the same roof. The note says that the addition will have new asphalt shingles to match existing. And my question is, how successful do you think it will be to match the existing? How close can you come?
I would imagine that on this roof, we'll probably just end up re-roofing the garage area. So it would be new asphalt shingles, to match the house as best we can. We're generally pretty good at getting good matching samples.
So you re-roof the entire garage?
I'm not
Is that right?
100% positive, but I would imagine, I think that's probably the direction we'll go. By the time we, tear back to rework the framing and stuff, I believe that it'll probably be a new
What
roof.
is the vintage of the existing shingles? What I'm getting
That's a
at
good
is-
question. I was wondering, they appear to be in pretty good shape. My guess may be 10 years old, maybe newer.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know how many trees you're removing for the driveway?
Actually, not many. I want to say maybe think all we're removing is maybe 2 or 3 trees up here, which are pretty small diameter trees. We worked extensively with the driveways and not really impact many trees. And actually, the ones that are shown removed on the landscaping plan, if I go to this last one here, are just being replaced with something nicer. So there's a possibility that we could keep more trees. It's just that once the landscaper got involved, he got excited and put more expensive stuff in there.
So it almost looks like you're adding more than an inch per inch.
Oh, yeah, we're
Okay.
the total vegetation and trees and everything is greatly increased.
Okay.
And there's a lot of buckthorn and
When you're
great
removing
trees.
Okay, great, thank you.
Are you, the driveway material is going to be asphalt?
I believe the primary material is asphalt, and they have looks like they have some brick inlay around the borders and worked in to create some breaks between new and existing, I believe.
Do you know if this is the reconfigured driveway makes additional hardscape or?
It does create a little additional hardscape, not much. We did submit an impervious surface calculation. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but overlaying the new with the existing, it's not a massive increase.
And has there been discussion with the cities about drainage for the new driveway?
There has not at this juncture, but I don't anticipate any drainage problems.
And Megan, that's something that the city looks at before final approval of any?
Correct. Associated with the building permit, there will be an engineering review.
Okay. Right.
Okay, so matching all the materials of the existing construction all the way through, and there's a proposed generator location shown.
Yes.
Is that subject to our review, Megan, or is that just a normal review by the city staff for the requirements of that kind of a device?
The location of the generator does meet the setback requirements and location requirements, and they would go through a permitting process to get.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions?
I have one more question. I'm kind of a uninterrupted space kind of bothers me. And on the south elevation and the west elevation, I don't see any windows. They're just, am I correct in that?
You're right. I was actually thinking about that today. The reason we didn't get any, weren't able to do any windows along the south elevation because that's primarily going to be storage right there.
Okay.
However, we could put a window in there, and there's also a possibility of putting a window in the south as well as the north. I guess I should say.
Yeah, it
It
makes it seem kind of blocky and, you know.
The area to the area to the west is so nestled in the trees. It's really hard to see it. If you look at this photograph here,
Right.
it's not a real elevation you would pick up. But I think you're right. The elevation to the south could be enhanced with the window.
So now, in that case, it would be a window into a storage area, right?
Perhaps, yeah, exactly, yeah. So it's not the most functional of all windows, but I'm sure that generally when we do storage, we do a lot of built-in shelves and stuff. We could, build around the window to make it work if we had to do it.
Is this the place for a suggestion, or?
We'll tell you what, why don't we
wait
see if
till
there's
later?
why don't we see if there's any public comments, unless there's any other specific questions. Any public testimony on this item this evening? And I see one, so yeah, please come on up and introduce yourself and tell us what you think.
My name's Lowell Dixon, I'm the neighbor to the west, and I
Please.
don't know.
Please, I'm sorry, Lowell, just step up, because we have television guys at home, and
Sure. Lowell Dixon, I'm the neighbor to the west, and I have no objection to what they're doing.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so now, Fred, I think it would be a great time to
Well, just something that occurs to me with respect to the area that was talked about being blank without any interruption of that, and the window was mentioned. Another option might be to put a white wood lattice work over it, out 6 inches out from the wall, let's say, and perhaps have it as a place where vines could grow and make an interest feature out of it.
That's a good idea.
Another thought.
Any other deliberations I mean, it's a pretty straightforward request. I think it's a pretty modest request, and I'm comfortable that it's well enough along that you'll look at that west side and the landscaping and the treatment of that, you know, pretty straightforward as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
All right, I'll ask if there's a motion.
I make a motion, we accept the petition as presented, along with the staff conditions listed in the report.
All right, the motion's been made by Commissioner Athenson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Swenson. It's been a while. Too much. All in favor?
Kidding.
Aye. Any opposed? That's a short memory in here, guys. We got the glasses out of the short memory. Congratulations, that passes. That's an unanimous one, just in case you wanted to know. All right, sorry about that, Susie.
All right.
Never forget what's for me.
I would have got the first day.
It's okay.
All right, our next request is a consideration for Certificate of Appropriateness, approving an addition to a residence at 630 Spruce Avenue. Building scale variance is also requested for this approval, and I'll ask the commissioners if there's any conflict on this one.
Nope.
And I see none, so.
I'm John Vinci. Firm is Vinci Hamp in Chicago. This is my assistant, Tony Crom. We were approached by Mrs. Hall to explore the idea of putting in a lift in the house. They're getting to be elderly, and it's really a question of getting equipment up and down the stairs, like suitcases and so forth. So we explored the house and went through every possible location for an elevator or a lift, and I came to the conclusion that wait, let's get the first line on. That the best place would be to take the front entrance and raise it, because I didn't think it was a very good piece of architecture. It was built, the house was built in 1962, and it was added on in 2002. And the original intent, according to Mrs. Hall, was that these dormers that are on the house were to have been bay windows with window seats in it, but the contractor built the wall straight anyway, so the little dormers are basically decoration. Also, there was another point I wanted to make about that. Without pictures, it's hard to describe everything. My computer whiz, I'm computer illiterate.
Your status is slipping quickly.
You're not the only one this happens to, so don't feel like...
There we go. Maybe by the time we get this done, it'll be dark out and you'll be able to see the pictures better.
I know, it's usually so riveting.
Yes, let me tell you, I watched a lot of these, they're all boring. They do that sometimes.
Very good.
Okay, well, we're looking at the entrance to the house. And my suggestion was to raise the front and get rid of the dormers and do the water engineering, because I thought there were too many problems for water disposal and getting rid of the water. So can you go to the next picture? Here's a detail of, I wanted you to especially look at how these fake dormers cut in there, thinking that that would make more room. Next picture. But if you look inside, see basically that wall goes straight up, and so those dormers are really ineffectual except for that small little slope there. So I suggested to Mrs. Hall that I thought if we were going to raise the entrance, the best way to do is to re-engineer the water so that it goes down in one or a few places and make a cleaner roof in the process. Next picture. Next, let's get to Okay, this is the site plan. We're not adding any more square footage to the site plan because we're simply going up, and we're only adding 96 square feet to the entire project. These diagrams show that little square in the corner there is the second floor area that we're airing. The first floor virtually stays the same. Next picture. This is the area we're working in, showing where the roof, I'd like to alter the roof in that small area in order to straighten it out and bring it across. And next picture. Here's how I was able to get an elevator into the closet on that side. It's a full-size elevator code, and it could go into that closet and go straight up, and you can get out in a little vestibule on the second floor. And I took the one of the two windows in the dormer and moved it forward and put it in the center of the raised area. This is the way I solved the roof problem. And here's a cross section showing, you're going a little fast, Tony. This is a side elevation. Leaving the portico alone, just adding the brick at the top, leaving the oval window, just raising the area that way and coming across. The height of the house is the very top peak. I don't go any higher than the skylights that are there now. Those are the two windows I'm removing and moving it forward to the new elevation. In the new elevation, maybe it's best if I point it out here. In the new elevation, what I did is in order to bring that roof and keep the line of the whole bay, I cut that line, cut that in like that, brought this straight across and cut down and raised this. All of this stays in place, and this is all new. This is brick corbelline, quinine, I'm sorry. This is brick to match the existing. The only brick we need is in these few areas. We'll take the brick that we removed from here and use it to place here, and here we'll use new brick, hopefully a good match, but the limestone portico cornice will be a good separation, and the color is slightly off. Next. Here's a close-up of that, of the elevation that I'm altering. You see now we have fewer collector boxes, which I think is better, and they're not so prominent. We'll use the existing collector boxes, so we relocated them basically. This is an alteration of those side elevations. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. Anyway, I think it's fairly clear from what we're seeing here. Anyway, these are the elevations. This is existing. That up there is the addition. That's the opposite side. The elevator will go right in front of the oval window. Here's the entire house as with the 2002 additions and the new elevation. Is there any?
That's it.
That's it? Yeah. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a staff report for this?
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. This project is, again, relatively small in scope. It was well explained by the Commissioner this evening. The aspect of the request that I'll focus my comments on is the building scale request. The request does require a change to the front elevation. The removal of the dormers, it's a change to the character of the front elevation, but it really doesn't result in an increase of mass or perception of an increase in space as perceived from the street. The existing house is already over the maximum permitted square footage. The proposed addition is relatively small and requires an increase of 3% to the already 45% overage. So it is a large overage because the existing house is significantly over what's permitted by today's code. As I mentioned before, the standards with respect to the zoning or the building scale variance speak to not creating an overscaled structure, being architecturally compatible and consistent with the historic preservation standards in the ordinance, and as presented this evening, this project appears to meet those standards. We are recommending approval of the project as submitted, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. And now is the opportunity for the commissioners to ask questions of the staff or the petitioner.
Again, let me ask you about this bulk issue here. So we're talking like a 48% overage. Is that what you're saying? 48% over bulk?
That's the total overage,
Wow.
correct.
Okay, so how did that happen? If this is a 1980s house and they had a 2002 addition, is that when they went over bulk so much?
The house was actually constructed in the 60s. I believe at that time, I'm not sure that there was a building scale ordinance in place. Since then, we have adopted building scale requirements, and as a result, the house is over bulk, and the request before you is to increase it by, I think, 100 square feet.
So originally it was over bulk.
So bulk ordinance was passed like in 91 or something like that, and if there was a 2002 addition to this building, it would have been subsequent. Someone would have evaluated the bulk ordinance at that time again and allowed it to again increase. I don't know how much. Maybe John could tell us how much was added in 2002. Do you know? Just in terms of, was a wing added, or do you know?
I don't know the
Okay.
answer.
All right. So at any rate, it was over bulk when it started, and so, you know, the increases.
I mean, we're not adding any rooms to the house.
Sure.
It's basically circulation. Any way you put in a elevator, you have to have a second floor space. I mean.
Yeah.
No, I just want an explanation, so when someone sees that we approved a 48% over bulk petition, we know why. I'm not saying.
Any other questions for?
Yeah, I have a question, and you know, I like the modifications. I really think it simplifies things, and there were some problems with the front facade, I think you pointed out. But you know, the elevator is really driving this, and so I have to ask, what consideration was given to putting the elevator in a different location, and why were those rejected in favor of?
That's a good question. We tried every location. I mean, before I was hired, Mrs. Hall worked with Bruce, who's here tonight, the contractor, and they tried every possible location, and each one had to come out somehow, and you ended up in the back of the house, and it rendered the elevator somewhat useless. I mean, the good thing about this solution, I think it improves the proportions of the house, my personal opinion, but also if you're going to have an elevator, you want it at the front door. You don't want to walk through, you know, the back corridors or something to get to the front door and then get to the car. You know, I mean, the reason for an elevator is to assist elderly people in walking the least amount or traveling the least amount, and that was, I thought, a really rational solution. That's, you know.
Okay, well, I won't quibble with you
Yeah.
about that, because, you know, people spend a lot of time in other areas of their house besides their front entrance, but can you tell me, getting back to what Susan was asking, how many square feet are being added?
100 square feet.
100
to the second floor, nothing
Right.
to the ground floor.
It's staying the same footprint.
Right,
There's
right.
just that additional space to
Right.
accommodate the elevator. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Now is the opportunity for the public, if we have any public comment.
We have a letter from a neighbor approving
Yeah.
something.
Actually, we got that. Bruce Reed sent a letter, and I think we got another letter. Was there a second one on this one, too?
Yeah.
Yeah, second one that was on our things today. So any other public comment from the audience tonight? And I see none, so now is the opportunity for us to deliberate, if we have deliberations on this issue.
Yeah, I think I already gave my comments. I think this is an improvement in the front facade. I am concerned about, adding additional bulk, but I don't see how it can be avoided in this case. And it seems, I don't want to say it's de minimis, but I'll say it's de minimis anyways, compared to what the overage is already. So I'd be ready to approve the petition as proposed.
All right, I agree. Any other deliberations? I'll ask for sorry, was there any other ones?
No.
Okay,
So
I'll
it's
ask
fine.
for a motion.
I'd move to approve recommend approval of the petition with the conditions set forth in the staff report.
And the motion's been made by Commissioner Ransom. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by everybody else. Let's pick Ms. I'm sorry,
Swenson.
Athenson. There you go.
Or Swenson.
I don't know.
Or
Well, you
Moyer.
pick one. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There you go.
Thank you
You've passed.
very much.
2 senior moments in less than a half an hour. All right, yes, I have. We have one more petition for this evening. It is a consideration for a request for Certificate of Appropriateness approving demolition of an existing residence and replacement residence at 595 Circle Lane. Relocation and alteration to an existing lily pond is also requested. I'll ask if there's any ex parte conflicts on this one.
I did have, Mr. Krasnodesky did an addition to our house 12 years ago, but I feel like we can be impartial.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, and I think we can be impartial, too. All right, so come on up, and, actually, I think we're going to take a small break here. There's a model for us to witness, so we're going to let the petitioner set that up, and then we're going to take a look around that, so take 5 on this one. Thanks.
All the viewers on TV are running to get the sandwich.
Exactly, this beer commercial.
How are you?
I'll get started then.
Please, thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Pairitz, Commissioners. Thank you for coming tonight and listening to our petition. We're very excited about this project. My name is John Krasnodebski. I'm the architect of this project, and I've been working on it with the Rosdolskis, Terry and Roy Rosdolski. They're here tonight. Also, John Mariani and his assistant Colleen are here as well. Susan Benjamin is our historical consultant on the project, and she's been very involved with the project as well. And so it's great to have such a team assembled. I think we've really got a great group of people. And there's a lot more involved that aren't here, and I'll go into detail about that. So I'm just going to get started with the neighborhood photographs that we've taken, just so you can reacquaint yourselves with the site. So these are pictures of the streetscape, looking in various directions. This is also looking at neighboring homes. As you know, this property is bordered by 2 empty lots to the south, and then the next southern property is this one. It's a Georgian colonial on the cul-de-sac, and it's a very interesting property because it also contains some garden antiquities from the original estate. This view is a little cloudy, but this is looking at Terry's home right now, looking directly at it. You can see the trees that are going to remain and offer some nice distance and screening from the street. This is a neighboring property as well, another Georgian colonial that's neighboring. Excuse me, this is the one to the south. I had it reversed. This is the home to the south on the cul-de-sac. This is the home immediately to the north. It's a Georgian as well. So this is a newer home built, I think, in the past 7 or 8 years, if I'm not mistaken. This home was built in the late 80s. So here is a good picture of the bordering vegetation to the north, and that's going to remain. So we're going to go to more photographs. And again, some streetscapes, kind of a winding streetscape. The subdivision was created in 1968, and most of the homes were built in the early 80s. Robert Kendler was the developer and builder of most of the homes, except for the 2 neighboring properties. Those are different architects who I don't know who they are. That's not on record. So what's very interesting about this property is that it has quite a history. It was originally Villa Turicum, the estate of Edith Rockefeller and Harold McCormick. They were married in the early 1900s, and this home was built for them as kind of a wedding present. And it was built in 1912. And apparently, they never spent a night at the home. They had some marital problems, and they went their separate ways. They maintained it for many, many years, but never really used it. So anyways, it's a very elaborate original estate, over 300 acres. The home was 40,000 square feet. There was a 21-car garage that was also on the property that was just as big as the home that's no longer there anymore. There are some stable buildings that exist further down Wesley Road. Very elaborate gardens and garden structures. Some of them remain, and most of them are on Terry's property. So there are 4 significant pieces, as well as others, but 4 are landmarks. 2001 by the previous owner, the De Bruins. And so 4 of these features are on this picture here. So there's a lily pool, a planter, this amazing water course fountain to the lakefront, and then the beach house, which originally housed changing rooms and a bathroom and a tunnel to the existing home. The raised home is no longer there. At the home, the original estate home was next door to Terry's property, and that's where that new house was built. That home was, the original estate home was torn down in 1956. The subdivision was created in 1968. So it gives you a little history on the dates there. As you can see, many of these features are in poor shape. I'm going to go in some detailed pictures of, these are some great pictures, and I hope that you have this in your package. This is a fairly common amount of deterioration on the staircase and watercourse that's going down to the bluff, to the water's edge. So repairs have been made. This is mostly concrete or cement plaster applied over limestone. Limestone had deteriorated, and so this was a fix, and that's all failing. due mostly to moisture that's coming in from the ground above and around it. So it's a drainage issue, really, that needs to be addressed in order to preserve these objects. Otherwise, it's going to continue like this. You can fix it, and then, 10 years, it's going to be the same thing. And I think that's the previous efforts that really, I think, missed probably the most important issue is eliminate the water from leaching into these elements. The freeze thaw is just really creating havoc. So you can see some other items that are missing. This is a marble sculpture that's just gone off the water chain. We've got some excellent photographs of the original and also excellent drawings. We've done a lot of research and we found many of the original plat drawings. They were at Columbia University in their archives. So we've gone down there, looked at them, we have copies, and we feel really good about some of these details that we can really bring back. So it's really exciting. You can see here, this is a fairly common missing detail on the terracing. All the balustrading is gone. So originally there was a lot of stone on these balustrades. And you can see the steps, a lot of chunks and cracks and deterioration on that. And so those are all part of the restoration plan. And Susan Benjamin's also going to go into some of the elements, but mostly about the lily pool. So I'm going to let her concentrate on that while I focus on the other items. And of course, John Mariani is going to address the landscape issues and the design of that, so that's going to be great. So here's a great picture of the original estate. You can see how it's right on the bluff's edge and how the water fountain related to the home and these staircases. So you can see the balustrading there, that's gone. And there is only one staircase on that side. Right now, this one is no longer there. There was a pool at the bottom. Now, if you've been to the bottom, but you can see that that's pretty much just fallen into the lake. There's a wall that's been poured more recently, and that's not an original wall. That was, I think, done in the 80s. This is a great picture of what the current condition of the pool house is, and you can see how much it's changed from that. There's no urns or piers or balustrading. You can see how most of the stone, which is probably in really poor shape underneath this new cladding. I believe this was done in the 80s as well. It looks to be a similar vintage brick. So they just kind of went over the deteriorated stone with it, and they filled in the windows, filled in the doorway, made some concrete patches that are really not too nice. And so you can see the deteriorated limestone. This is an important thing to consider because we took this as a major influence in the design of the new home. We brought a lot of these details into the design of the new home, which is an Italian Renaissance architectural style, really relating back to the original Villa Turcum. It's not a copy, but it's just a similar style. But we can really use these elements into the new design, which is really fun to incorporate. This is a really interesting picture of the water course, and you can see some of the original elements that are gone. These urns, these piers, this tub is no longer there. All this cornice detail above that fountain is gone. So here's the current picture. And so again, major part of our efforts are going to be in bringing back some of these details, which I think are just really great. All right, so that's the water course. Let's discuss the site. And I think I'm going to bring up the Mariani plan because this is nice to look at. And try to get it a little bit larger. Here we go. All right, so a lot of siting considerations came into play with this design. You can see this is the water course and beach house at the bottom. This is the retaining wall. Here's the reflecting pool, original. I should say it's a planter. It's not really a reflecting pool. It was a pool at one point, and now it's a planter. These are piers and stairs. These are not landmarked, but you can see they're original to the property. So, and then you can see this very unusual configuration of the lot. And so this property is all about this outstanding lakefront view. And so this siding is done, most importantly, to maximize the exposure and view of the lakefront, which is, I think, the #1 concern in siting the home. with the neighboring home being so, neighboring lot being kind of oddly configured, there is a large lawn expanse here. When you go to the backyard, you think that it's part of their property, of Terry and Lori's property, but it's not. It's the neighboring property. Now, Terry and Lori maintain it. They cut the grass. Otherwise, you know, you would lose this element in weeds and shrubs. So with this property line and a neighboring property with the potential of a home, a fence, screening being built here, with the current orientation of the current home, it's looking in that direction. And so we felt very important to preserve the view and keep the home more parallel overall with the length and depth of the site. So it's closer to being parallel to the front, and it maximizes its view of the lake. You can see it's a very traditional design. It's a U-shape. The home is Italian Renaissance in design. It takes its cues from Charles Platt's original Villa Turcum, as well as some other, I think, influential homes that were built in the early 20s in Lake Forest. A lot of Shaw influences. Sternaway on Lake Road is one of them. So a very kind of horizontal design with a low sloping roof line, large overhangs, and masonry construction. This is limestone and stucco. And we have a two-story element in the middle with lower one-story elements. So I think that the scale of the home kind of gently cascades down to the front yard. The home in relationship to the neighboring properties is smaller. It is further back than the neighboring properties. This is 108 feet from the property line. The two neighboring homes are 96 and 98 feet, so it's a 10 feet back. Plus those are two-story walls that are showing to the street. These are one-story elements, so if you take that into consideration, it's a good distance back from the neighboring homes. So it's smaller, it's lower by 2 feet from the neighboring two homes, and architecturally, it's, I think, really taking advantage of the site. So let's look at some of the elevations. This is a color rendering of the front elevation. It's showing some shadows to get some idea of the three-dimensional quality of it. So a lot of limestone detailing, the coins, the front porch, the steps. There's a base around the perimeter of rusticated limestone. The corners of these shallower projections are all have limestone coins as well. There's a slate roof. It's a bluish color. There are shutters. The windows are metal, or steel, I should say. You can see the limestone detailing around the windows. On the left is a three-car garage, and on the right is a conservatory. So there's a nice asymmetrical balance. The massing is symmetrical, but there's variation within that symmetry. So it's not a perfect symmetry, which I think is a more interesting way to get symmetry, is to have slight differences, even though the balance looks very even. This conservatory is more transparent because there's a lot of glass on it, and I think that's also a very nice element. There's going to be a see-through quality to it, so and the reflecting pool. I should call it the lily pond. It was originally designed as a lily pool, and we start with the reflecting pool. But I want to go on that in a minute. So you can see that through the conservatory, which is, I think, a really nice feature. So you can see it's a very horizontal kind of design. And here's a more 3D. So you get a feel more for the massing and the details. You can see all the windows and doors here. There's a fairly consistent use of arches. The beach house at the bottom has a lot of arches. And so I think that's a nice tie-in to that. And the stonework, particularly on the front elevation, has rustication that we're taking cues from the beach house rusticated stone as well. And then there are urns penetrating the roof structure. That's a very Shaw detail, but also these urns are very consistent on the water feature down the bluff. A lot of them are gone, and we're going to bring those back, but this is another nice tie-in to that detail. All right, so let's look at some elevations. While we're here, I'll look at this one. This is an overlay of the existing versus the proposed home. And you can see the existing home is non-conforming. It's another complexity of the site. There is a steep slope setback, and we've had it engineered and located by a surveyor. And I think it's in your package. We have to draw some diagrams to really locate that setback. As you know, bluff properties have a very strict guideline with their setbacks, and it's all determined off the bottom of the bluff and the water's edge. So anyways, this is the setback, the toe of the slope, and then you have to go 75 feet back from there, so that's this line. So the new home does not penetrate into that setback area. The existing home does, and so we're pulling it out of there, and I think that's a good thing. Although we've had soil analysis done, and it's a very stable tableland, particularly with this retaining wall here. That is in really outstanding shape, and I think that's a big reason why it's so stable. It's been there for 100 years. And that's part of our plan, too, is to maintain that wall as well. We've had John Shabacker. He's a bluff consultant. He's done a lot of work along the lakefront. He's done a lot of neighboring properties, not immediate neighbors, but further down the lake. And we've had him evaluate the bluff, and he thinks it's in really great condition. The previous owners took great care of it, so had the current owners. So I think the current plan is to maintain that slope in its good condition.
Hey, John, we've gone through our time a couple times now. Why don't you try to do your best in like 2 minutes to just complete the overview, and then we'll get the staff report, and I promise to ask a lot of questions and give you an opportunity to give us the landscaping as part of the Q&A if we can do that. That would be
Maybe
helpful.
what I might do is, I think I've talked enough about the architecture of the house.
Yeah.
And we could go into detail
Yeah.
for that. Maybe I'll have Susan Benjamin speak about
That'd be great.
really
I think that'd be a good overview. Let's treat it
Yeah.
kind of like this, get the overview. Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll sit here and do that.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Susan Benjamin.
Hi, Susan.
I just wanted to say a few words about the orientation of the house in relation to the historic house and the lily pool. As you can see, the design is all about axes and cross axes. And I wanted to tell you, if you want to see some really wonderful additional information, there's a blog, Villa Turicum blog. And a lot of these images are from somebody who has been posting for months. So take a look at it. It's wonderful. Here, it's interesting to see the scale of this 40,000 square foot on a house on 300 acres of property with a lily pool that is 115 feet long and 25 feet wide and 4 feet deep, and in scale with the formal landscaping around it. And you can see how everything, it's all out axes and cross axes. Okay. Charles Platt traveled to Italy. He photographed Villa Lante, and I'll tell you just briefly a little story. When I first saw this property 10 years ago, I was a judge for the Preservation Awards, and subsequently we went to Italy, and on the agenda we went to Villa Lante because of my having experienced this. And it is really a superlative design element that is going to be restored by Terry and Laurie. Next, please. And here you see, in this gorgeous watercolor, and this is all off the blog, how you approach it on a very axial way, and the. Do you have a pointer, John?
Yeah.
Apologize for that. Okay, so you can see that here's the house and the axes and cross axes and the ravine and the pool in relation to the house. all about formality. And when the subdivision occurred, it was totally, I would imagine, to maximize the development, but totally disrespectful of the beautiful formality of what was originally there. Here is the pool. And I think you want to move ahead. Yep. And this is another house on the subdivision with this folly, and that, at least, you know, the axes and the cross axes are maintained. You can see sort of the odd relationships here. Here is the water element. It's a little hard to see because it's, you know, sort of dark, but there is no relationship of anything to anything else on the property. Remind you that this was a very stunningly laid out formal landscape. Next. Here's the formal garden with the house, and there's the pool. This is what it's going to be restored to. That's Villalante with the water feature. It's really amazing, and this is so like it. Next, please. And this is the before that will be restored. And Platt himself photographed Villalante for his book, Italian Gardens. Next. Here's the pool, which I gather, I'm not an expert on lilies, but I gather they require a rather extensive root system, and just from seeing it at the Botanic Garden where the lilies are, but this is what it looked like. Notice the formal garden adjacent to it with these posts that have busts on top of them, because we'll take a look at that again. But again, you know, it's all about formality and the relationship of formal landscape elements and hardscape elements. And now it's kind of in this isolated state and quite out of proportion to anything else around it. But what's beautiful, which John is going to reuse, is this pink marble coping and the bricks, a 5-foot area of bricks around the pool. Next, please. There's another photograph of it just to give you a sense of, it's just kind of out there in a rather isolated fashion, unrelated to the current house. And I think the plan that John and Terry and Laurie are working out with John Mariani is a really nice solution to preserving as much as possible of the elements, putting a house on the property. This is the formal garden adjacent to it. Putting a house on the property in relation to the pool that works in the way Platt had kind of envisioned the property for Edith and Harold McCormick, with axes and cross axes, and in scale. The pool will be reusing a lot of these elements and in scale with the proposed house, and is a comfortable preservation solution to a very kind of peculiar problem. But the way it is now, I mean, so many of the other structures that are landmark elements in town are related to something else. You know, whether it's the fountain at Market Square or the bridges, I mean, they're part of a public landscape. And this is kind of just isolated and out there, and it will have a home adjacent to a house that will recreate the formality that was originally part of the historic landscape. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And like you said, we'll answer a bunch of questions.
All right.
I want to have John have an opportunity to talk about the trees.
No problem. Let's do our staff report. We have, I'm sure, lots and lots of questions, and we do want to hear some more about the landscaping. And I want to, it's a complex project, so just take a step at a time. So what do you got for us, Megan?
Thank you, Chairman Pairitz. Well, this certainly is an interesting and complex project. And really, due to the scope and complexity of the project, this petition is before the Commission for input and direction. The homeowner, the architect, the consultants have all put a lot of time and energy into the proposal that's before you this evening. But there really are some threshold issues that require thought and input from the Commission to help guide the petitioner moving forward. A few years ago, recognizing the connection to the McCormick estate, a previous homeowner nominated the structures that are on this property, and they were designated as local landmarks to the historic district. That's the reason why this request is before the Historic Preservation Commission and not going before the Building Review Board for the demolition request of the existing house. It's a challenging petition. The Commission really needs to weigh several different aspects and factors to find an appropriate solution for the project before you. One of the threshold issues for this project from a staff perspective is really the relocation, the alteration, and the change of use of the lily pool. That is one of the designated structures on the property. And the Commission, we're asking for input on how that request weighs with the request for the overall site development, the restoration of the other structures on the property, the demolition of the existing house, the impact to the site. So there's a lot of information that the Commission was provided this evening, and that's one of the reasons why we're bringing this to you in stages to get some input at this point to help the petitioner move forward. As I mentioned before, because of the demolition associated with this project, if these landmark structures were not on the property, the Building Review Board would be reviewing the request for demolition and a new house. As a result, the Commission is not seeing other projects in the neighborhood, so I just wanted to point out that there is some other development going on in the neighborhood that the Building Review Board is reviewing, and we have received several pieces of correspondence from neighbors speaking to changes to drainage, changes to loss of trees, increased footprints. So I did forward that information to you for your reference. But I think at this point, the petitioner does have a lot of information to share with you. The staff report is written to really provide a framework for your discussion, to ask questions, to gather information, and then provide some direction to the petitioner this evening on how to proceed. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Megan. So with that, John, maybe the best way to proceed is if we could cherry pick some questions for you. Well, let's start with the alternative site plan layouts. Do you have those for that you could walk us through? I'm curious.
Yes.
That's such a driving influence in how you progress in the design. So I'd like to just review those really quick, understand how you tried to reuse the lily pool and what the obstacles to reusing the lily pool in the existing location are.
Yeah, give me a second to find it. I've got 50 drawings
Deep
here.
in the heart of the, after that even, I think.
This is kind of an interesting one. I know you didn't ask the question.
Sure,
but
yeah,
this
it's fine.
shows,
Tell us about it.
this is the neighboring, this is the neighborhood. So you can see, do you have the pointer, Susan? Okay. Here's Terry's home here, and you can see the reflecting pool here. It's half the size of the original. The original is 25 feet wide by 115 feet long with an additional 5 feet of brick banding around it. So we're going to reuse all that material here, and in combination, there's an area down at the bottom that we can use any remaining material. The brick we can really use to repair the brick that's on the water course. There's a lot of destroyed brick there that we can salvage from the lily pool surround. And you've seen that lily pool sidewalk around there. There's a lot there too that needs repair. So what's nice is that we can reset all that, in its new location. Anyways, so here's the neighbor to the north, new home, and here's the neighbor to the south, newer home too. And so let's go find the alternative site plans. The issue is the lily pond, as it sits now, is so large that doing anything else that relates to it can't be done because of the narrowness of the site.
Could you repeat that?
Pardon
Could you
me?
repeat that, please? I didn't.
Yeah. We've studied the alternatives quite extensively, and a very large difficulty is because of the existing size of that lily pool. It's 115 feet long, and so it's so large that trying to work with it there are no alternatives.
So its
too big.
surface area is what?
Pardon me?
What is its surface area?
Oh, surface area of the, I'll do some quick math, 115 times 25. 30 by
250?
120, 5,000 square feet.
And what is the surface area of the plot of land? That we're
Oh, the
dealing with?
land, 126,000 square feet.
Go to the next drawing.
A lot
and
of it
it's-
is bluff
Yeah.
and lakefront.
I think if you see the next drawing in this series, at least in our package, it's the next drawing in the series.
This is the streetscape, so you get a feel for the empty lots next door. Okay. Hang on. I don't think that's it. Next one in mine is
Oh, yeah, different.
original plat of survey, so you kind of
Different
see
set, sorry.
the crazy lot lines, which, I mean, it's good to see the regularity of the property. It's a shame. Well, here's something interesting. You know, Terry did approach the neighbors to try to purchase that property, but an agreement it wasn't in the cards to buy it. There was a strong attempt. Terry tried for a year to buy this property to kind of resolve this really crazy property line. Because you know, if it was straightened out like that, that'd be a whole different story. But it's the cards have been dealt with that subdivision. Okay, so give me a minute. I'm going to try to find the, I think it's further out. They're too small to read. Okay?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I'm getting closer. So this is a good one to look at. You can see the relative size of, you know, it's half the width of the property. So here's one. Okay, so this is what you do. The current home, not the current home, the proposed home. If you try to have an axial relationship to the lily pool there, and it just doesn't work with setbacks and property lines and access to the front of the home. And again, once you start rearranging the house around this 115-foot pool, most of your views are just gone.
John, was the original layout of the lily pool in that kind of an axial arrangement?
It was axial to the side of the home.
To the side of the
And
home.
so that was an important consideration where we're putting it now. We felt that was a good way to deal with. A lily pool should be on the side of a home, we felt, or reflecting the pond. And that's the way it was. And so our current design has a great relationship between the lily pool and the house. And so,
John, can I ask you a question about, this alternate study intrigues me a little bit. I understand this is the current design of the house, just moved into, you know, a different axis with the lily pool. But did you look at other designs of, you know, in which, you know, you could be on axis something like this? And,
yeah,
you know, because, you know, just without just eyeballing it, you know, it seems, you know, a little clip here, a little pull there, and, you know, it might be, you know, it within the setbacks and on axis with a lily pond, you know.
well, it doesn't work because, again, the most important aspect of this site is the views of the lake. That's why Terry bought this property. It's a lakefront home, very expensive property. Once you do this, you're turning your back on the lake. So it doesn't work when you try to axially locate the new home relationship to this pond.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but, you know, if you remove the conservatory to the back, pull things forward, you know, they'd have a beautiful glass conservatory that had sweeping, you know, vistas of the lake, and we keep a historic element, and, you know, and obviously I'm just spitballing here, but, you know, I believe there's, you know, some alternatives which you know, that need to be explored to keep the lily pond and, you know, and keep the vistas too. I mean,
yeah, and we have done that, and it can't get both. It's just, like I was saying, it's too big of a lily pond. If it was, you know, 1/5 of the size, maybe, but because it pushes everything so far that way, it ends up being a long, narrow house in this direction. Right now, what we have, it's parallel to the lake, so every room in the house has a view of that lake. And that is critical to the success of this home for Terry North. You know, if we have to have just half the rooms with a view of the lake, that's not a successful result for Terry North. So we have explored it. I'm going to show you another one that we've done where it's actually more similar to the way the original Villa Turcom was designed, where the lily pool is on the side of the home. The lily pool was never, in the original design, the main feature of the home. It was a side feature as part of a formal garden. So, you know, putting it in the front, putting on access with the front of the home, it's contrary to the original design intent. So we want to do something that saves most of it. We're altering it. We're going to restore it so that the coping is in great shape, so the foundation's in great shape. You have to consider that the lily pool, the only original element left is that coping. I mean, the interior of that has been totally replaced. The plumbing needs to be replaced because it doesn't work. The fountainheads, there are 2 bronze dolphin fountainheads. Those are gone. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the coping. And we're saving 60% of the coping for a very similar design that relates really well to a home that relates to the original estate and relates much better to these elements than the home that is there now.
So this, in this version, John, I'm gonna hurry you along through some of this. In this version, you're in the setback area, right? So that's
Right.
an obstacle here. Was the original home in the setback area, do you
Yes.
think? Yeah, it was. Okay.
Yes. It was on the bluff's edge. It was basically right on line with this retaining wall.
I see.
So, yeah, it was.
Great.
So this you can see. So 2 issues with this are, you know, it has a view that's crossing over the neighboring property. So, you know, once there's, you know, they put a pool in or they put landscaping in or a fence in, you know, that all of a sudden half their view is cut off.
Yeah.
So this kind of axial relationship doesn't work either because, again, the paramount feature and necessity of the design is to run the view parallel with the lot lines. Once you start going skewed from that, you jeopardize those views. And I think that would be a disaster if you're in the home and all of a sudden you're not seeing the lake anymore. So I feel that that's, you know, if you don't have that, you don't really have a project, I think. So let's take a look.
You know, can I just back up here for a second? I've got a couple questions. Because we've kind of just skipped over the whole demo issue here. And you didn't even address the criteria for demo here. And I got a question for you, Megan, because we actually have 2 different demos that are being requested here. One is a demo of the house, and the other is a demo of the lily pool. And one is non-historic, the house is non-historic, and if the lily pool wasn't there, that house would go before the BRB, and they would have to be approved according to their demo criteria. The lily pool there's a request for demo for that to us, and that has its own demo criteria. So I'm wondering, and I understand I saw the demo criteria that you detailed in your report, but you were applying the HBC demo criteria for the house. And it didn't seem to really match up. Shouldn't we be applying the HBC demo criteria to the pool and the BRB demo criteria to the house?
So a question for staff.
I would say that the Historic Preservation Commission criteria apply for the whole property. So the question of relocation and alteration to the lily pool, as it relates to the demolition of the existing house, can all be reviewed in the context of the Historic Preservation Ordinance.
Well, so how is the criteria for Historic Preservation Commission different from the demo criteria for the BRB? Is there a difference?
There are different standards.
Mm-hmm.
The Building Review Board does consider the historic character of properties as part of the criteria for demolition of structures outside of the historic district. They look at reuse of an existing structure and viable alternatives, the structural integrity of a house prior to demolition. And then, of course, they review the replacement structure in the context of the demolition request for appropriateness with the streetscape, with the site, preservation of trees, minimal change to grading, and those other criteria.
Okay, because from my previous experience on the BRB, looking at a house like this under the demo criteria for the BRB, to me this house would not meet the criteria for demolition because it's, according to the structural engineer's report, in good condition. We haven't even talked about that. It's a beautiful house. It's cited according to how this lily pool fits in there. Now, the demo criteria, if you applied it to the lily pond would not meet that criteria. So I'm just wondering, and I'm really struggling with this because I don't think we're really looking at this project. It's very complex, and there's two different structures here that there's a request for demo on. So I think we need to be fair and really look at that and think, are we really reviewing this properly?
Well, I think
So
it's a valid concern, and we're asking the questions. What I was trying to get to is what the root of the design intent was and why they proceeded along the way they proceeded, so we could understand that. What was driving the change, from the existing condition to the proposed condition, and so. I'm just nibbling around the edges of a lot of different issues, and I was just trying to understand one of the ones that I was considering fairly important, which is this, this historic lily pond. With respect to which demolition standards apply, I think we have the luxury in the HPC to consider the character of the neighborhood and the context of the historic features when we think about what should be preserved and what should not be preserved. It's actually a little bit more, in my mind, a tougher test, but a little bit more available test in terms of we have more latitude probably than the Building Review Board does to grant a demolition permit if we think that something that's being proposed is a big improvement with respect to the character of the neighborhood. And also I think we have to consider the context of what the ramifications would be to the preserved items if we don't preserve them, if we don't allow someone who can make an improvement to the property to preserve the features. So I think that's important part of what we're thinking about here is that if this, if this kind of a petition is not granted, what happens to these rather expensive features to maintain and restore? It's all part and parcel. We've seen it before in major petitions like this, and this isn't something we're going to walk out with a decision today. We're asking the questions. I expect that we will table this, and we'll give you a to-do list, and we'll give the staff a to-do list because that's probably our biggest thing is that we need them to help us work up the appropriate other considerations that we raised today. So, I'm happy to have you, let's ask John that question. And with respect to the demolition of the house, you have a report on the condition of the house. Did you look at saving the house? Is there aspects of the house that, we'll give you a little bit of latitude on this Q&A to finish your presentation, if you will. But I do want to also, we can talk about the house, talk about the other important features. And I do want to give, 5 or 10 minutes on the landscaping, maybe 5 minutes on the landscaping, but to talk about drainage and trees, and we want to understand what the impact to the neighboring properties would be during a construction. So those kinds of issues, and I'm not even sure where to start, but I'm cognizant that it is 5 to 8. We should be able to wrap it up sometime tonight. But we're jumping around a little bit, and I'm sorry for that, but it's the nature of our process. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of information to digest here. The last thing you mentioned was the drainage issues, and I know that's letters been written about the neighboring property that's being presented to BRB. We did, with Rozdowski's, were nice enough to invite all the neighbors over last night. We showed them the model and all the plans, and I talked in great detail to neighbors about drainage, particularly the neighbor to the north. Tom Nance, I believe is his name, right? And so we had a long discussion about it, and he welcomed us to use his storm sewer system. I said, no, we don't need to do that. Right now, the property does drain very nicely front to back. There's 6 feet of elevation change. The existing drainage system all ties in towards the bottom of the ravine. And so our thought process is to change as little as possible that drainage system that's occurring now. It's successful. You know, we've had Chairman Massey Engineering as well as Shabacker and Associates look at the bluff condition and the water runoff. And those are 2 really strong points of the property now, so we're going to maintain those items. So Tom, the neighbor to the north, said there's a low spot between the properties to the front. And so we said, well, you know, we can put a catch basin in there and drain that. There's no effect from our construction on that property line. It's existing low. We're not going to change it. We're not going to add dirt there because there's a lot of trees that are going to be maintained there. So we're going to put a drain in, and then I think he's going to be very appreciative of that. And so, you know, engineering plans do get submitted to the city, and I'm sure they're going to be really pouring over those quite carefully. So we feel confident that that's not going to be an issue with, of course, the Rosdolskis want to protect their property, and so they're going to take there's a big responsibility in this ravine. You know, you look at the neighboring properties to the south, and they're in terrible condition. They're not being maintained, and every year tableland gets eroded, and there's nothing being done about it. It's great to have clients like the Rosdolskis who have the ability to maintain this important property. Most people would not be able to. You know, the condition deteriorates in these landmarked items. And so, you know, if things don't get fixed, and particularly the drainage within those structures, every year you're going to see more cracking and spalling, and it's going to get that much more difficult to repair and expensive to repair. So I feel very fortunate. I think the city should feel very fortunate that this is an opportunity. I would look at it as an incredible opportunity to preserve these things. I don't see the lily pool as being demolished at all. I see it as being preserved. You know, the only thing that's original is the cove, and we're preserving all of them. You know, the function is slightly different. The shape is the same. It's in total scale with the house. I think it all comes together. So I don't see it as demolition at all. I see it's preservation. Alteration is what it is, while the other things are getting preserved and restored.
Hey, Megan,
so
could you review that? I'm sorry, John, but would you review that just so what's the difference between a local historic landmark and a national historic landmark? I mean, is there a different kind of protection on a local historic, or, I mean, how, just so the public knows, what's the difference between the two?
Sure. Properties and structures on the National Register for Historic Places is really an honorary designation. With respect to our local register, those properties have the benefit of being protected by the Historic Preservation Ordinance. It's an opportunity for the Commission to weigh in on alterations and changes to the property to make sure things are consistent with the Preservation Ordinance.
So with the local, there's a pretty extensive process of going through trying to get a property on a local historic designation, correct?
The process to nominate and designate a structure or a property on the local register would be a request brought before the Commission and ultimately before the City Council, looking at the criteria in the ordinance for nomination and designation.
And so, and part of that, does that give it protection from demo? If it's a local historic property?
It requires requests such as this to come before the Commission, so the Commission can weigh the full scope of the project and look at the ordinance, look at the project, look at the impact to the site, and make a determination based on the criteria in the ordinance.
So just to refresh my memory, the last time we had a request for this was on Ridge Road when we had some outbuildings with, is that the last one we saw on Ridge Road and the outbuildings that were a local designation?
There was a property several months ago on Broadsmoor that was a local landmark. It was a property outside of the historic district, but there were outbuildings that were designated as local landmarks.
Right,
yes.
Okay. And we spent 4 meetings on that, I think.
Just to follow up with that, because I'm getting a little confused with the terminology being used here, is what is being proposed for the Lily Pond a demolition or an alteration? Because those are different criteria we're dealing with.
As staff looked at this, and ultimately it's the commission's call, but you have often looked at opportunities to preserve historic structures, historic elements, and sometimes that's done through restoration, sometimes that's done through alterations, sometimes it's done through adaptive reuse. We do have historic structures in the community that were once churches that are now residents. They're not preserved in exactly their original use or their original state. I think from the staff perspective, as you've noted, this is a complex project, but it's also an incredible opportunity. This property has not been sorely neglected, but has suffered over the years. And going forward, if we don't look at this creatively, if we don't take advantage of opportunities, I think it's very likely that we will lose some or all of these structures. So it seemed appropriate to us, since some elements of the Lily Pond were being preserved, that this could reasonably be looked at as a modification, as an alteration, as an adaptive reuse. Certainly the commission could simply look at it as a demolition. And while I'm speaking, just let me speak to the question of BRB. Certainly we could separate this project. We could send the house to the Building Review Board. They could look at that strictly on their standards. I actually think it is a benefit to the community and a benefit to the commission to look at this project as a whole. I think it doesn't make any sense to pull the pieces apart, and as Chairman Pairitz said, the Historic Preservation Commission really has greater latitude to look at overall character, to look at what's in the best interest of preservation, and that doesn't always mean leaving things alone. Also remember that the Building Review Board has different authorities with respect to demolitions. The Historic Preservation Commission makes a decision, and that's a yes or no decision. Building Review Board, there's a little bit more flexibility in that. So I think this project in its entirety is properly before the Historic Preservation Commission, and as the commission, you do apply the standards in the preservation ordinance, not those in the Building Review Board ordinance.
John, can I ask you a question, since we brought up the whole scope of the project, and we want to look, we may want to look at it all together, rather than separate elements. But as far as the restoration of the other historical remnants, like the water, the pool house, the waterfall feature, the planters, those are all proposed to be restored to some condition they had in the past, correct?
Correct.
And you're proposing to restore them to their original condition?
There are, not quite, there are two staircases. Well, it's been altered through the years.
Well, and that's kind of what I want to hear about that, how you're going to determine at what point they're going to be restored
and
to,
that
and
might, that may not be for tonight, but I think one of the things that we would be very interested in is understanding the specifics of those that's an important part of it.
Yeah.
No, I want to know, what you're looking at, what you're going to be referring to as you develop your plans to do that. I mean, if there's documentation that exists, if you're going back to old photographs, you know what I'm asking.
Absolutely,
okay.
yeah, and that's our intent. We've got most of that collected. We've gotten drawings from
And what exactly has been collected?
There are 60 drawings of Charles Platt that are in the Avery Architectural Library. Platt's from New York, and so his family inherited the drawings, and was really interested. And so, searching the internet, we found them, called them up, and they gave us something to look at them, and you can actually purchase copies or photographs of it. And so there are, most of them are of the home, the original is gone now, but there's quite a few of the garden features, mostly of the beach house and the water course up the bluff.
And just, you know, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you bring that petition back to us for approval of, you know, whatever changes you're going to make or restoration you're going to make to that, that type of documentation would be really beneficial to our determination, as much as it as you can, you know, include without completely overwhelming.
Well, I think actually, you know, we're working way ahead of the curve actually, but I think that's something that I would charge staff with, you know, with developing for us is, you know, some standards for us to understand, you know, because I don't want to sit in a meeting and have to go through what kind of mortar you're using and which aspects of this.
I'm thinking more of, you know, design rather than
give us a whole plan. That's worked out.
Yeah, I don't want to go back to straw if that's what they used back in the day.
Be like a
Just FYI, I've got, that's one of the drawings right there of the beach house.
Okay.
I want to take a close look at it. It's
Okay.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, we will. And, you know, Kurt's right in some respect that we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because we want to give you general direction. But I think that general direction is, this is the way the project is developing, you know, you should keep in mind as it moves forward and bring it back to us, at least from my perspective.
If you don't mind, let's get through the landscaping part. Why don't you tell us about that? And then I would like to see if we have any public testimony this evening on this, and then we'll deliberate some more, and we may have more questions for you during the deliberation. Yeah.
All right, for landscape, I'm going to turn it over to John.
That'd be great.
Because he
Thanks.
developed the landscape plan, so I'm going to put it up on the screen. Also, there's drawings here as well.
Yep.
I'm John Mariani, Mariani Landscape, Lake Bluff. Let's get the drawing up there. We'll walk through it. Well, essentially, we're developing this landscape the way we always develop a landscape, and that's to complement the architecture and the needs of the client. In this particular case, we have an Italian Renaissance home. We're going to be working with a plant material palette and a hardscape material palette that would be typical of this type of architecture, number one. We're going to be using plant materials that complement the home and that they'll be asymmetrically balanced to relate to the house, for example. We'll be using hedges and evergreen hedges and possibly even topiaries in some cases and those types of things, although we're trying not to make it overly formal because, of course, there's a lot of maintenance involved with that and it doesn't fit the needs of the Rozdalskis, all right? But it will complement the home, most importantly. And the materials will be of a mature state, a more mature state than you might typically see, so that it works with the scale of the house. Not that this house is any bigger than most of the homes that are in this neighborhood, but nevertheless, it is a fairly mature neighborhood now, so that's the approach we're going to try to take. And that's essentially it. The lily pool idea, putting it to the side of the house, like John had mentioned, was a way of actually, in fact, when we first started with this project, we weren't even considering the lily pool. It was just so big and out of scale with just about any house you could ever build today. But we felt very strongly that we would like to retain that. And in fact, all we're really doing is pushing it together. And my guess is when we do pull that apart to put it back together again, there's probably some of that coping that's not going to make it through the process, my guess is. And all the more reason to maybe shrink it up a little bit and, of course, make it work with the scale of the house, have it offset to the side like it was originally. And I think it's just a great way to deal with that. And we're going to make a garden space out of that. Right now, I don't think it would hold water if you really wanted it to anyway. It's the basin is in really, really bad shape. And I think the best use of it would be as a decorative border for a garden, and that's how we're going to develop that.
John, the tree survey that we have in front of us is a little bit hard to read. It looks to me like the removals that are occurring are more modest-sized trees, although there's a fair collection of them on the north side of this site, where the garage of the house is. Am I reading that correctly, or?
You are. In fact, we walked through it again today just to have a look at it and double-check it. And a lot of probably the majority of the trees that would be coming out are fairly new volunteer Norway maples, which are actually an invasive species, right? Considered invasive species right now. We landscaped this place the last time around. Okay.
We're taking out what you put in. Huh?
Yeah, we're taking out a lot of our own trees.
Careful what you say about that last guy.
Yeah, especially the Norway maples. Okay, in some places, and in fact, we'll probably be going back in with Norway maples because of the only evergreen screening we're going to be able to use that gets tall enough and will not be affected by the deer browsing, which is a real problem in this area as well, so we have to deal with that. The neighbor to the north is a client of ours. We did that landscape. The neighbor to the south, 2-3 lots down, is a client of ours. We did that landscape. So we're very sensitive to that whole situation there. We certainly would like to retain our client to the north, who's adjacent to this project. So I'm sure he'll be very happy to have us working on this project, and I think things should go pretty smoothly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Marani, the letters that were attached here that were sent by neighbors to the Building Review Board were attached in our packages as information, and some of them spoke to concerns or speculation of concern that the oak trees would have irreparable damage done to their root structures by the new construction and so on. Could you speak to that issue?
Well, there's always things that we can do to protect the roots of the oak trees. From what I saw, though, and in fact it was staked out, so it was easy to see today, there are really only a couple of oak trees, not very many, that are problematic, really. And in fact, one of them, the entire top was dead in it. So there were a couple of white oaks that, one was real close, the other one I think would have to go. It's unlikely that we're not going to have to take some trees out to put this project in, but of course these setback requirements are pushing us into these areas where these trees are. But I didn't really see it as a major removal of quality native trees in that area there. I really didn't see that. I think it was more, like I say, invasive Norway maples and a lot of Norway spruces that we in fact planted. They're big evergreens. We can certainly get more big evergreens, and they're not important native trees in this area. They're just screening elements. So I don't see a real problem with that, to be honest with you. And in fact, I was surprised that there were so few trees that would be good quality trees that would be impacted.
Thank you.
And then, I don't know if this is a landscape question, John, maybe it is. The condition of the bluff and really the landscaping on the bluff, I'm just curious, have you studied that at all? Can you give us a commentary on the state of affairs there?
We did, and one of the first people we brought in was Shabacker Associates, and they're very involved and knowledgeable about bluff restoration and bluff management. So they were the first group that we brought in, and they felt very comfortable with the situation on that bluff now. As a matter of fact, they thought you could probably remove thin out some of the invasive species that are starting to grow in there, some buckthorn and things like that.
So by the time you develop a final landscape plan, you'll look at that a little closer and
right, we'll probably have a detailed plan of what's going to be removed, but it's probably just going to be some scrub that's not affecting that's going to not harm the bluff.
Just a couple more questions, and then I'll ask if there's any public testimony. The drawing that you've shown of the new proposed home, I think, is a pool in the setback area of the bluff. And could tell us about that, and is that a staff concern in terms of locating a pool in a setback area? Is that an allowed feature in a setback area? Forget about the bluff problem for a minute. Just tell me about the setback problem.
Sure. It's certainly something that our engineers will have to look at closely and make a determination if the bluff is stable to support that type of development. But typically, all development should occur outside of the setback area.
Including a pool, hopefully.
Correct.
All right. So that's something that we'll challenge you a little bit on. The other thing is you've got a ramp down on the right side, call it the south side of the driveway, that as it approaches the new location of the relocated lily pond. I assume that's for basement parking of some kind.
That's right. Underground garage.
And the length of that ramp, is that a studied length? Is that something that you think is a reality, or is that something that needs a little more care? Or I'm trying to understand the location of the end of that driveway to the end of that lily pond, if that's a true.
About here?
Yeah, is that
Right
a
there,
true
that point?
relationship? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Currently, we have cut sections. Maybe I'll show you that. So it is a.
So you did draw a section through that.
Yeah.
So okay, fine. Thank you. That's all. That's good enough for the moment. And could the ramp down be configured differently so that it would avoid the end of that lily pond? For example, if you skewed that back towards the, I'm just making this stuff up now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what are you thinking?
But I'm just asking the questions.
Yeah. Well, we do need this length. This is not, luxurious length.
Right.
So we're trying to keep it to a minimum.
Okay.
Obviously, we want as little, that kind of element as possible.
Mhm.
So we do, what doesn't show up on this is the landscaping that's going to be, actually, we do have it on the landscape drawing, so I take that back. So this will be landscape. There is a retaining wall
Sure.
there because of safety issues.
Sure.
You have to have a barrier so people don't fall into the ramp. So right now, we thought that this, this aligns with the garden, which we like. This is green space in between the two.
Mhm.
So it's at I don't want to bring it any closer, so
Right.
to shorten it up, it probably doesn't function
Yeah.
as a ramp. You do need a certain slope to make, so it's safe. There are codes for that, and it's meeting the codes.
Is this, just ask a question about bulk for a minute. Is this a under bulk proposal?
It is.
It is, thank you. Any other, do you have other questions for?
I'd like to follow up on the ramp
Yeah, please,
and
go
the
ahead.
underground parking. Trying to visualize where it is, and from the standpoint of, is there landscaping above it? Is there sod roof? How big is it? What part
Sure.
of that?
Yeah, I'll point that out. It's essentially underneath the conservatory and the courtyard. So it's this, I'm kind of circling it with my pointer. So this is access you turn in at this point.
So underground, there's a 90-degree turn in.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is essentially where the garage door is underground. So it opens, and then you're able to turn in, and this is the parking space underneath the courtyard. What I'll do is I'll outline that, so you'll have
Yeah.
a relationship drawing.
Yeah. Well, I have a deliberation, but I'm not ready for deliberation, so.
In addition to that, we, of
I want to
course,
ask
want
you,
to keep
I'm
it.
trying to keep the questions.
Yeah, and I think that's a great spot for it because there's no
Yeah.
trees. We're not
Sure.
taking any trees out for
Sure.
that, so it's compact.
Let's
within the
see if we have any public comments, because I know people have been hanging around all night if there are any, and I want to not make them hang out any longer. Do we have any public comments on this for this evening? Is anyone interested in?
I'm just going to pass this around.
Please.
As I mentioned, the Rosdowskis had the neighbors over last night to
Okay.
look at the model and the drawings. And they're all very excited, very supportive.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure you saw that. 'cause
Great.
We put a lot of effort into that.
How about other folks that have come tonight? Is anybody else interested in giving us a public comment? I see none, so that's, I just didn't want to have anybody hanging out in the audience all night if they wanted to offer a comment. Megan?
I would just like to point out that at your places this evening, there was a letter from the Preservation Foundation regarding this request.
Yeah. John, the one question that comes out of the letter from the preservation, well, there's more than one question, but at least one question is just in terms of, so that we can think about this appropriately, time frame for workplace activities on this site. From start to finish, is this can you estimate a length of time that this takes to?
Year and a half.
Okay. And
When did you think the project would start?
We would start as soon as possible, which, submit for a permit. It takes about 30 days
Yeah.
through the city process.
So you're thinking
This year.
this
Yeah.
year sometime? Okay.
The lily pond, I'm not sure what to, I'll call it the lily pond.
Pool, lily pool.
The use is proposed to change. It's actually proposed to go to a garden feature with a fountain, a sculptural fountain in the middle of it. And so the idea is that you're preserving the coping around it, but you're changing the use to be a kind of a more formal planting element. I'm wrestling with whether that's a good way to preserve that element. I'm also wrestling with, I was looking for a way to preserve a closer relationship of the old pond to the new pond, if you will. And so we've changed it from this rather lengthy lily kind of pond, which had one kind of, design intention, if you will, related to a much larger estate, albeit. Now it's a smaller feature that's, has a different kind of presentation to it. It's a fairly, it's a fair stretch in terms of rehabilitation of it from personally, I would have preferred to see it remain as a water feature, remain closer to its original use and frankly closer to its original geometry, even though if you shorten it a little bit. So that's why I was asking questions about the driveway access and whether there's a alternative design to that. Do other commissioners have feelings about that? Are you guys, do you have any thoughts about that? Am I on the wrong track there, or is that?
Well, no, I
disruptive?
Obviously, from my perspective, the alteration or demolition, whichever we decide it is, of that element is really a sticking point for me, being on the commission. I'm not sure you've convinced me that all the alternatives have been looked at and that there isn't something more that can be done. I understand that the homeowners, want the design that they want and want the views that they want, and that's perfectly understandable. But they also bought a property which had, historic elements designated and, took it with those. That being said, I'd like to see it preserved more as it originally was proposed. I'm not foreclosing, some alteration to it, or even, altering it more closely to what you're suggesting. I just haven't been convinced of it at this point. Certainly, if this was considered a demolition, I don't think that the demolition criteria of the HPC ordinance would allow us to demo it. But, if we consider it an alteration, we probably have more flexibility. So,
well, let me ask you about that alteration too, because Mr. Mariani made a statement that he doesn't even know if the coping's all the coping's going to survive if you transfer. So there is the threat of losing the historic element of this. So to me, that would make it a demo. But if that happens, then what do? Just you make your own?
Well, I think it's a little early to actually comment on what the challenges are in removing it. I've been talking to Restoration Mason, who does restore landmarks, national landmarks. And so we've hired him as a consultant to look at that. His first look at it, I don't think John was at the meeting, his first look, this is not going to be a problem to move this and relocate it. But that was first glance.
I wouldn't expect it to be.
Yeah, I don't see much deterioration in it. But we have hired a consultant to really evaluate the condition of those copings. My visual inspection, my opinion that it's in good condition. So I feel confident that it can be repositioned successfully.
My knee-jerk, and really this is knee-jerk, so take it with a grain of salt. My knee-jerk reaction, would have loved to be able to preserve the lily pond in its existing location and respect the landmark designation of it. I do understand, based on the alternative layouts and just the location of the lily pond on the site, how it can be a major impediment to a different solution, or to a new home. So I'm open-minded with respect to that element, but I would be interested to have more background from maybe Susan Benjamin, not necessarily immediately, about the relative importance of these different elements. I mean, I don't know if they're all relatively the same important, if one is more important than the other. You know, I look at the stuff that's happening down at the lake, and, you know, mentally I leap there first and go, wow, that is really wild stuff. You know, we don't have that anywhere else. Let's try to keep that. The lily pond, you know, it's to me, there's a different order of magnitude, but, you know, just not a studied reaction. It's just however, at the same time, I'm challenging you, Ms. Benjamin, on the rigid geometry of the lily pond to the house, because there's no rigid geometry left to what's going on the lakefront to this house. It is kind of in a different tangential kind of relationship. And I think the lily pond could also turn and be longer along the property line and still perhaps have room for that driveway to work. I'm not sure. There's something to look at. I think you should check that out.
I do know this. We have studied length of this and increasing the length. And it's possible. I have it centered on this view corridor through the loges and front porch.
And I appreciate that. In its current use, that makes sense because it's got this planted sculptural kind of garden, you know, which is nice. I understand how that solution was developed. It's a different solution than having it continue to be some kind of a reflecting or lily pond.
I'd like to say a few things about
Sure,
that,
go
because we
ahead.
did discuss it in detail.
Yeah.
So the lily pool is deep. It's 4 feet deep. So it is what's called an attractive hazard in that, you know, you can drown in it if there's no fence around it.
Yeah.
So, and that's been a big concern of Lori and Terry, because they want their property to be safe for their kids' friends, you know, their friends, relatives. So, you know, once you have this, I think it's an obligation, if you keep it, to put a fence around it. And, you know, at that point, you know, you lose a lot of it. Again, it's another iteration of losing.
Is there a fence around the swimming pool?
Right now, there is going to be a fence around the swimming pool. Exactly.
But John, did you, thinking about the safety issue of this, did you explore the option of basically what they did at Market Square with the fountain, where they filled it in with concrete so it wasn't going to be a drowning hazard? I mean, isn't that potentially what you could do to this one too, to prevent it?
Yeah, that can be done.
To make it more resistant to the pool?
It can be done, but again, that's, you know, it's an alteration. So we think the net result of our solution is a better one, in that when you look at the project as a whole, house relationship to an altered, no matter what, if we keep it, it has to be altered. It has to be fenced in or filled in, so it changes. So it's an alteration in that case. It's an alteration in our case. It's a little bit more pronounced with our solution, but I think when you look at it in entirety, with the new home and the restoration and everything else, it's a win-win. You know, leaving its existing spot, it alters too. You'd have to. You couldn't leave it as it is. You know, it's an eyesore, and it's too deep. It's really too deep.
Could I ask a question there? Are you proposing in the altered state in the plan that it is a different depth than 4 feet, or is it still 4 feet deep?
Well, our number one proposal for this side alteration is to have it as a garden. So it wouldn't be 4 feet deep. I mean, it'd be 2 feet deep with dirt in it, so you could plant material in it.
But not, it would not have
so
water?
So it's not a reflective pool. We do want a sculptural fountain feature in the middle, but not the whole thing being a pool. Because again, a 60-foot reflecting pool.
Yeah. I hear you.
Is somewhat of a hazard.
So it's actually, you know, I mean, the precedent is on this property, this planter, which is in the front of the lake side of the house. You'll never know which side is the front of the house. A lake house is always the front. But, sorry, that was a pool before, right? That was not a planter originally.
The lily pool? Excuse me, was
no, not the lily pool, the planter.
Yes, that was a pool at one point. Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
I mean, the precedent is on the property. Actually, it's interesting.
Yeah.
And when it was landmarked, I assumed that was a planter when it was landmarked.
Correct.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Overall, I'm very supportive of what you're doing, so I don't misunderstand if I'm directing comments that seem negative, because on the whole, I really feel very good about what you're proposing. But what you just said troubles me, that idea of filling in the pools, that were to make it a planter. I think that's another level of alteration, that now it's not a pool anymore.
Right.
And at that point, I think, preserved very little of the character that it once was. Shortening it is one change that one could consider and say, well, still a pool, it's just a shorter pool. But now I just heard it's no longer a pool. And I was thinking before you, a couple of suggestions or ideas were being thrown around as to how it might, the safety issue might be addressed. Because I think, by the way, you have the same safety issue at 40 feet long that you have at 115
Yeah.
foot. Shortening it did not make it safer.
Correct.
And if it needed a fence before, it needs a fence now.
Well, if
So,
it's a garden, you don't.
as a garden, but that troubles me that it's no longer a pool. I was feeling okay about shortening it, but not becoming a garden.
Yeah. I do think if you can still have a reflecting pool, it could be less deep than 4 feet.
Well, that's, my
And
suggestion
that
was
can
going to be to go
water.
with something
And I
6
think
inches deep.
Then you can still
And
make it a safe feature.
it could be 6 inches deep, and the visual effect would be the same. One does not know how deep the water is. It's water, and be safe, from that point of view.
Yeah,
But-
we've been struggling with that, and frankly, our discussions that we've had about it is that, you can't have water in these things in the winter, right? So you drain them.
Sure.
It's like a pool. But the thing about a swimming pool is that, if you configure it correctly, you can have an automatic cover on it, and it's just a very practical, easy winterization. With these reflecting pools, it's really, we're in the Midwest, and the freeze thaw, it makes it it's a very difficult thing to maintain. So we felt the long-term benefits of it would be to keep it as a garden, since the coping, we feel, is the most important feature of it.
Yeah. Well,
That was our discussion.
If I might continue just with another thought, I realized the shortening was also related to bringing it to scale with the house. It was part of the logic or recommendation there. But I think what's really shortening it is the ramp going to the garage. And I think the ramp going to the garage is not really attractive. If we're looking at design elements and the quality of the relationship to the house, the ramp is really not going to be attractive for any composition. And so my thought, just to throw something out, is to consider maintaining the 115 feet, letting it go where the ramp is, and move the ramp to the opposite side of the property where there's a space between houses, and it was losing it up there. I was throwing it out, and not to say that is what you should do, because you may investigate that and say, well, here are the problems with that. So that's just taken as an avenue to look at, not a conclusion that that's what should be done. But I think it's worth investigating, because it would not trouble me to see the 115-foot length coming down that side, largely from the side of preservation, just that you maintain the element in its original dimensions and state. And it has, in that case, a geometric relationship to the new dwelling, which is parallel to its side. It is at the side. You've made a big point about that. I think that's what it was before, and that's what it is now. I think that would be worth looking at. The house, I think you're doing a magnificent job with. The character of it and relating to the original Villa Turcom, I think, is just magnificent.
Can I clarify your comment? It's very interesting what you're saying. So you're saying to keep the original length, 115 feet, in the location that we have it, and you can do that by putting the ramp on the
Moving the
other
ramp
side.
and letting it go down.
Right.
And then Mr. Mariani would have to do some wonderful things to integrate all of that as one composition. Just an avenue to explore is what all I'm suggesting.
I think we looked at it, I think it's worth another look.
All right. Any other, my intention here is to continue this petition. I would like to give you some food for thought, exercise to address, et cetera, et cetera. So I have some ideas on that. Do we have other folks that have questions or dialogue before we try to do that?
Well, I just had one comment.
Please.
As always, I think both the staff and the Historic Preservation Foundation did a good job in in sort of queuing up the issues here. And the first issue, which the staff queued up in our materials, was whether, in fact, it was appropriate to do what's being, however you want to describe it. I would call it a demolition and reconstruction, but you could call it a lot of different things. But the first issue, and I think it's a threshold issue, is whether what's planned for the reflecting pool, whether it's appropriate or not. Because we run the risk, in my opinion, of wasting a lot of our time and a lot of the owner's time and money if that's a threshold issue for them, and the only thing you can do on this lot is move this particular house around, rotating it one way or another, and we're unwilling to envision the demolition of this local historic landmark. I mean, we could give them a laundry list of things to do, and they would spend money doing it. But maybe there's a threshold issue, and I just point that out.
Sure. Okay, well, it's a fabulous project from my point of view. I mean, I think that it's I'm not at all offended by someone coming in and proposing to make a change like this to landscape feature, to a landmark feature, in exchange for the preservation of other important landmark features. So I think you know, from my point of view, it's not a non-starter at all. That's just my own starter. So, but I will challenge you throughout the process to do as much as you can to not discard, you know, features that are landmarked. And so I do think that a little more work on this lily pool would be helpful to see, whether it's alternatives to the location, maybe the strict geometry, maybe you could extend it, maybe you could move the driveway a little bit further. Think about it. I understand how you wouldn't want to maintain two separate water features, a swimming pool and a reflecting pool. It might be you know, it is not as attractive as just planting it in terms of a maintenance point of view. However, that may be the cost of admission. We'd at least like to understand what it would look like, you know what I'm saying? And frankly, it may be that when you're done, the historic reason for having a reflecting pool was to do one thing, and now that reason doesn't exist anymore. You know what I mean? So just please explain that story for us so that we understand it. We don't want you know, it wouldn't be our intention to create an element of the home that is not in keeping with the rest of the design, that you just say, fine, we'll do it, and then frankly, 6 years later, somebody makes a landscape planner out of it. You know, that's the thing. I mean, that's what would happen if we forced a solution on you that you didn't like. Someone would change it down the road, we'd never know it, and it, you know, or worse, it wouldn't be maintained and we couldn't control that either. So we want the solution to make sense. We want it to be in keeping with the design of the home. I think that I'm not offended by the loss of a 1985 home, however large, on this location in exchange for a superior solution. That doesn't bother me. It's not a historic home. And so the demolition didn't really rear its ugly head. Susie is rolling her eyes at me because she has a different opinion on that, and keep that in mind. We do not all have the same opinion. Okay, but the pool, you need to do some homework on the pool, because that's an important element of your design, and it is in the setback, and we need to make sure we understand that that can be done. So there's some engineering homework to do on that, and frankly, on the staff side, I'd like to know if there's precedent for putting that kind of stuff in that location. Because my understanding of setbacks on bluffs is that we very, very rarely go into those setbacks. So I don't know if there's something that can be done to minimize that. I don't know if, you know, anyway, it's a concern. The parking, I think, is the ramp is a concern from 2 points of view. Just you need to make that attractive as you drive in from the street. So we don't want to see that as a unattractive feature from the street, even though there's only a few residents that drive by it. You might think about that as instead of a Well, I don't know, John, you're a smart guy.
Yeah, I'll
Take a look at that, take a look at that.
Do things. I mean, there's a lot of landscape things.
What am I missing? Bill, are there other things that you're on the top of your list beside? You had a really good one early on about making sure that we understood what the rehabilitation of the landmarks would really be.
Right. And I made my comments earlier, and I think you know where I stand right now, and I just want to say something about John's comments because they're, I think they're well taken. Clearly, the historic preservation ordinance is put in place to give us the ability to make alterations and to change things that have been designated historic landmarks. So I don't think anybody on the commission, finds any particular element saying that will never be changed and, that is going to stay there because it's been designated a historic landmark. And I'm certainly not, wouldn't say that myself. But I do go back to what I said before, that I think there's alternatives that, in scale and design changes that may be able to be looked at in which we can, those historic elements are kept. I could be wrong, and, I guess your job going forward has convinced me otherwise. But I'll also say that, we faced petitions like this before, and I've moved from one position to another during the process, but I also think the process that we have in place really led to a lot better solutions than the first petition we saw. And so I'm hoping that, in this process, our concerns will be addressed, and the process will lead to a better, solution all around for both the homeowners and the community and historic preservation. So.
Any other comments from commissioners?
I'll reiterate what you said, Bill. It's just really important that we really see some alternatives for preserving that pool. I mean, I keep going back to that Broadsmore petition, and how many times did they go back and look for alternatives to, say, the Gardener's Cottage? How many times did we go over that? So I'd really like to see that effort from your point and trying to preserve that element and really some viable solutions. I mean, I don't think I've seen really viable alternatives here for preserving that. And, if it's really something you tried and it's really not going to work, okay, I get it. But I'd really like to see some more alternatives.
Okay. Can I just throw in a couple comments on the house, the proposed house? I love the symmetrical, non-symmetrical nature of the solution. I think that is really very nicely done. We have, the precedent for that in Lake Forest is Market Square. Market Square has that. The two towers are not symmetrical, but the orientation of the buildings is symmetrical. And so it's hard to find done very, very well, and I think you're on the right track on that. I think I'm seeing a slate roof with a metal roof as well on part of this, or is that?
The conservatory has a metal roof.
And that would be a turn roof, or what would the?
It's a galvanized. It's probably going to be gray in color, complementary to the slate, and that's done on purpose too, to give it a lighter feel to it. Versus slate, we felt that might be too heavy for the amount of glass that's on that structure. And
I see what you're doing with the limestone. Just walk us through, just really quickly, is this a synthetic stucco? Is this a true stucco finish? You've got some an architectural feature here that you brought in. Just tell us about that.
Sure,
stuff.
love to. So these are the eave brackets that are on the overhangs. So you don't see them on the elevations too much. You pretty much just see them when you're looking at the base of the home looking up. So it's a 3.5-foot overhang, and so we have these brackets supporting the overhang. So it's a very Italian Renaissance feature, and something that we think is going to be really adding another level of texture and detail to the home. And so the underside of the eaves themselves are stained wood as well, so it's a dark surface on the underside.
So the brackets are going to be stucco?
Wood. This is wood. This is cedar that's stained.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it kind of looks from here. Yeah.
Okay, so the brackets and the soffits are all wood.
Correct.
And then where does the stucco come in and out? It just comes in.
It's the wall. It's a majority of the wall feature. We have a base of 2.5 feet of stone, limestone. That's rough cut, but ashlar pattern.
Yeah.
And then from there up, it's stucco, and it's stucco over concrete blocks. So it's a cement plaster material.
Okay.
Cementitious, it's not a synthetic.
Got it. And you're using aluminum windows?
Those are steel.
Steel? Hopes
So
windows, is that what that is?
Yeah, it's Hopes.
Mhm.
So again, it's a very historic type of window.
Nice. Goes kind of along with the metal railing work and that kind of thing. And then the shutters would be mounted into true hardware.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's beautiful materials, and it's really bringing another level of detail that you don't really see very often.
So I had on my list drainage, just make sure, and I'm sure that that'll be in the engineering report and all that, but particularly the pool is the engineering feature I think we should find out more about early rather than later. Talked about the lily pond at length. General condition of the bluff we talked about, but that's, there was a comment about reuse of the unused pink marble. If, in the event that you don't use it all, would you use it somewhere else? And I think that dovetails into Commissioner Ransom's comment about the details of the restoration of the other. So, have we given you enough information for you to come back to us with some alternatives and some further study? Are there open issues in your mind that we need to talk about before we conclude this evening?
Yeah, I believe I hear what your comments are, and we can certainly bring you more information, and hopefully, I think we can offer a pretty convincing argument to support it. Again, I just keep going back to, I just see it as a win-win for everyone with the restoration of most of the elements. I think when you look at the big picture, it's a successful project. So I think we'll show you reasons, I think, to support that.
Okay, thanks. Do I need a motion to I'll take a motion. Oh, sorry, any other comments before we do?
No, that was my question, whether we're continuing this rather than.
So I'll ask for a motion to continue.
I move to continue the petition.
And the motion's been made by Commissioner Ransom. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Athenson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we're continued. It's a wonderful piece of work. Good luck with it, and we'll look forward to more information on it. Thank you. Now's the opportunity for the public to address the Historic Preservation Commission on non-agenda items. Are there any non-agenda items for this evening? And I see none, so I'll ask if there's any additional information from the staff.
Just a reminder that the commission does not have an August meeting, so we'll see you in September.
Perfect, thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn if there is one.
I move that we adjourn.
All right. The motion's been made by Commissioner Travers. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ransom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.